Tanya for Chaf Vav Kislev. It's the second day of Hanukkah. We're going to begin now, Perek Beis, chapter 2. In this Perek, the Alter Rebbe is going to introduce and elaborate on the second part of the soul that a Yid is given. As we explained yesterday, are two neshamas that every Yid has, a nefesh habahamis, which that animates the person, and a desire a person has, anger, etc., comes from there. And today we're going to explain v'nefesh hashenis. Let's begin. V'nefesh hashenis b'Yisrael, the second soul that a Yid has, he chelik elika mimal mamash, is truly part of Hashem's above. Now, the reason why the Alter Rebbe says chelik elika mimal mamash, why does the Alter Rebbe add the words mamish, truly? Because sometimes you can have, in speech, you can have something which is taken figuratively, not literally. And Alter Rebbe wants to tell us that that the nefesh hashenis is a chelik elika mimal, is literal, and it's mamish part of Hashem above. Now, so the nefesh hashenis b'Yisrael chelik elika mimal mamish k'mei shekasav, that's written, says about Adam, who Adam is a neshama klalis, it's a comprehensive soul, and Adam contains all the neshamas apratim, the specific souls, the particular souls. So it says about Avram, by Adam, it says, it says, and he blew into his nostrils a soul of life. And we say in davening that the neshama of every Yid is, we say, you blew into me. Now, when you use the verb to blow, it relates to the infusion of the Jewish soul. And now we're going to explain that. So, when it comes to the souls, what does it say? Nishmas Chaim. Because of the says, Man de nafach, miteiche nafach. He who blows from within him. Pirish, what does that mean? Miteiche yusei umipinim yusei. From his inwardness and its innermost being. Sheteiche yus upinimius achayis shabadam, meitzi benefichasi b'chayach. For it is of his inwardness and his innermost vitality that a man emits through blowing with force. In other words, blowing tires out a person more quickly than speaking. You see this clearly. So when you say a metaphor of blowing and describes to Hashem implanting the Jewish soul in the body, that shows that the soul originates from the innermost aspect of Hashem. That the Yid is rooted in Hashem's innermost and essential being is indicated further by the designation of the Jewish people as Hashem's children, whose souls originate in his thought, just as a child stems from his father's brain, as the Alter Rebbe was going to explain. Now, so the neshama comes from the pnimius of Hashem. So too, neshamas Yisrael mashava. So too, the Yiddish souls rise in Hashem's thoughts. So we see thought, it's also the innermost level of godliness. All other created beings, even malachim, are rooted in the divine dibur, speech. Which speech, as we said, compared to breathing, is very external. So neshamas Yisrael alu b'machshava, as it says, b'ni b'chayri Yisrael. It says in regards to the Yidden is my firstborn. It says about every individual Jew, Bonim atem Hashem lekechem, you are children unto Hashem, your Hashem. Pirish, what does that mean? Just as a child is derived from his father's brain, it says, the Gemara says that there's three shutfim in a person's birth. It's Hashem, it's the parents, and it says that the child is derived from his father's brain. So too, the neshama of every Yid is derived from Hashem's thought and wisdom. Okay, now Alter Rebbe is going to take this concept a step further, saying that Hashem's thought and wisdom actually implies that it derives from Hashem himself. Now, the Iyul Chakim, Hashem is wise, Hashem possesses the quality of wisdom, but now with the wisdom that is known to us as created beings. He and his wisdom are one. When she goes to Rambam, as Rambam says, Shuhamada Uidea. Rambam writes, he is knowledge, and he is simultaneously the knower, who knows and comprehends. So, what he means like this, Hashem's wisdom and comprehension are totally different from a person. In a human comprehension, there are three separate, distinct components. You have the person's soul, which is the knower and possessor of the knowledge. He's the idea. You have also the power of intellect and comprehension, which is the knowledge by which the person knows. And then you have the subject of the knowledge, the known. As the Gemara discusses, Hashem's wisdom, the Rambam writes, he is the knowledge, the knower, and the known. It means that this happens all simultaneously, which is very difficult to understand. As Rambam says, and this is not with the power of a man to comprehend and clearly. Can you find and understand Hashem by searching? It's also written for my thoughts and not your thoughts. In other words, human thoughts cannot possibly comprehend my thoughts, Hashem says. Now, the Kabbalists have agreed with him, which goes with part of this Ramak, as it says in part of this Ramak. According to the Kabbalah of Arizal, also Rambam statement stands. This is also so when implied the principle of the clothing of the Ein Sof by means of tzimtzumim, contractions, and in the kelim of Chabad, which Chabad is an acronym of Chochmah, Bina, and Das. And also you have from the word of Atzilus. Through the process of a self-limitation called tzimtzumim, contractions, Hashem manifests, or in Kabbalistic terms, he clothes this Ein Sof, his infinite essence, in the spheres which are his attributes, which are his midas. This manifestation occurs first in Atzilus, specifically in Chabad of Atzilus, which is divine intellect. So at the level of Atzilus, Hashem can indeed be defined by, in Rambam's terms, of knowledge of the Mada Oyedeo or Mada Oyedua. He's the knowledge, he's the knower, the known of intellect. But not higher than Atzilus. In other words, above the Atzilus, the unknowable Hashem cannot be defined. So in terms of the Kabbalistic scale, the Rambam has nothing to say about Hashem except in the world of Atzilus and down. Which because of Makamach is written somewhere else, Ein Sof Baruch Hu Merim Misnasid Numisin Kates. Ein Sof is infinitely exalted higher and transcends the essence of Hashem. It's higher than these levels. In fact, the level of Chabad is regarded as being equally inferior as material actions and related to him. Which because of, like it says, he made all of them with wisdom. Even though there are different levels in the Shamas, many different myriads of levels, ranking upon rank, for example, the souls of the Avis and the Moshe Rabbeinu are far superior to the souls of our own generation, which belong to the period preceding the Mashiach. Which they are like the very souls, S-O-L-E-S, of the feet in comparison with the brain and the head. So just as the life force found in the souls of the feet cannot possibly be compared to the found in the head and brain, to that found in the head and brain, so too there can be no comparison between the souls of the present generation and those of the earlier generation. Similarly, within every generation, there are those who are the heads, the leaders of the Yidden. They are designated because their souls are the category of the head and brain in comparison with those of the masses and the ignorant. So too, between the Nefashis and the Nefashis, the level souls of Nefesh. Every soul consists of Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama, just as the soul level of Neshama varies from one yid to another, so to the levels of ruach and nefesh. So thus we see how manifold are the difference in the race of the neshamas. So we would expect similar variations of the divine sources. The greater the soul, the higher its source. Nevertheless, sheish kol nefesh ruach neshama kulam. The root of every nefesh ruach neshama comes from Rish kol madregas anseif kol dargin. So the root of every nefesh ruach neshama from the highest of the all the way to the lowest. So the lowest being those souls embodied within the simple folk and the most religious and irrelevant people. Nimshach Mimech Elyin, they derived from the level of Midayach Elyin, the supreme mind, which is the Chachma Ilah. In order to help us better understand why the levels of individual souls vary so widely despite their common source, Alter Rebbe now returns to the analogy of a father and son. He used earlier to illustrate the description of a Yid and Hashem's children or derived from Chachma Ilah. So let's explain. In this analogy, the child's entire body is derived from a drop of semen originating from the father's brain. Yet the many physical components which constitute the child's body are by no means uniform. They vary greatly from the brain, the highest component, to the nails of the feet and the lowest. Now, these radical differences come about throughout the presence of the drop of zera, which the mother's womb during the 9 months. In this period, the physical development that produces the differences between one organ and the other, the more materialized a particular component of the drop becomes, the more it diverges from the original state and becomes an entity on its own unique physical characteristics. So you see that although all the organs come from the same source, nevertheless, in the process of the development, there arises a radical difference between the brain and the nails. Now, the same is true with regards to the neshamas. All the neshamas are derived from the same source and root, from Chacham Ilah. But the soul must descend there through multiple worlds of levels before closing to the physical world. It is this descent that creates changes in the soul's level and differences between one soul and another. The soul is affected by the descent to a greater degree than the other. Okay, so he says this. This is an analogy of a child who is derived from his father's brain. Even the nails of the feet come into existence from the very same drop of zera which comes from the father's brain. How then were the nails created? Through it being in the mother's womb for 9 months. It went from descent to descent. Until even the nails are formed from it. Now, though the child's organs all derive from the same source, the drop of semen which comes from the father's brain, yet they develop into entities as radically diverse as the brain and the nails. And in Kolel, nevertheless, furthermore, although the drop has been so altered as to become the substance of the child's nails, still bound and united in a wondrous and mighty unity with its original essence and being, namely the drop of semen as it comes from the father's brain. Now also by the son, the nails receive their nourishment and life force from the brain that is in the head. Neither shall, like the Gemara that says, Loivin says from the white of the father's drops of the zera, to form the veins, the bones, and the nails. So there's a connection between the nails and the brain. As the Shar Hashmal in Chitz Chaim says, states a connection with the esoteric principle of Adam's garment in the Gan Eden. That the garments were nails derived from the cognitive faculty of the brain. So too, so too with regard to every nefesh ruach neshama in the community on high. By the soul descending, degree by degree, through the ishtalshus of the world of Atzilus, Bri, Yitzir, and Asiyah, from Hashem's wisdom, He is written in Kulam B'Chachma Asisa, as it says, you made them all with wisdom. In other words, everything emanates from Chacham, which is the source of Ishtalshlus. So through this descent, the Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama of the simple folk and common people come into being. Their souls are most strongly affected by the descent, and therefore they're on the lowest level. So all the various levels of higher and lower souls are determined by the soul's descent through Ishtalshlus. The Rebbe now relates the second point in the analogy in our case. Just as in the analogy, the nails of the child are still bound up with the first source through being constantly nurtured by the child's brain, so too in the case of the soul. It calls that, nevertheless, notwithstanding the fact that they were already become souls of the lower levels. Nevertheless, these lesser souls remain bound and united with a wonderful and mighty unity with their original essence, namely an extension of Chacham Milah. For the nature and the life force of the Nefesh Ruach Neshama of these simple people are drawn from the Nefesh Ruach Neshama of the righteous and the Chacham, the heads of the Yidden. So by drawing their nurture and life from those who represent the level of head and brain, all Yidden are bound with the source of Chacham Milah. So now we can understand what Chazal say, Ladovka Bay should cleave to him. And the question is, how can you even cleave to Hashem? So the Gemara says, whoever cleaves to a Torah scholar, it's deemed by the Torah to have actually become attached to Hashem. How can one equate cleaving to a Torah scholar with cleaving to Hashem? But now we can understand why. Through attaching to a Torah scholar, the Shama of the Amaretz are bound and united with the original essence of the root and the supernal wisdom. He and his wisdom are one. That he is the knowledge. And those who willfully sin and rebel against them, how can they receive the spiritual nurture and life? The spiritual life and nurture flow only when there's a desire to nurture and give life. So the answer is, the nurture of the Nefesh Ruach Neshama comes from the hang part of the Nefesh Ruach Neshama of the scholars. It says in Zeh Chadash, the essential factor is to conduct oneself in a holy manner during Tashmish. Mashengim and Aleoretz, Mashengim and Ne'amaretz don't. So the simple folk, as Azer explains, draw down from their child a soul of lower level, which seems to indicate that an action occurring in the physical world can in fact affect the soul's level. So this is not so. The Seir is not referring to the soul, though, the soul's spiritual garment. Because there's no Nefesh Ruach Neshama is without a garment which stems from the Nefesh of his father and mother's essence. And all the commandments that he does, is influenced by this garment. So it is through the garment that the soul achieves its ability to affect the body and to perform the commandments involving physical matters. Even the flow to one for heaven is given, the other one says, is through this garment. Because the soul is so strongly bound up with this garment, the Zohar refers to the garment in this context as the person's soul. If the person sanctifies himself, he will bring forth a holy garment of the Shema of his child, enabling the child to serve Hashem more readily. And even, however, even if it's a high soul, still needs the father's sanctification by the time of Bia, Tashmish. But the Neshama itself, as distinct from its garment, is not affected by the parent's sanctification. Sometimes happens that the soul is infinitely loftier person. Body is benishal news of reshuffle. Comes out that a person can have a son, which is, it happens sometimes that the soul of the lofty person comes to be the son of a lowly person. Which calls for a result is kind of the calls of the Likutei Amarim. This is explained by the Arizal in the Likutei of Parshas Vayera and in Time Mitzvahs Parshas Bereshis. So the physical world of which the parents are part of can no way affect the soul's spiritual rank. Even the statement of the Zohar that the essential factor regarding the state of the soul is the holy manner of conduct during tashmish only to the soul's garments. Soul itself, with all its various levels, emanates from Lomilo.